Howdy, good folks. Welcome to yet another episode of the Growth Chat by 𝐬𝐩𝐞𝐫. And today we have Emilia with us. Emilia is the head of marketing of Userpilot, developed on a platform on the thesis that there are a lot of in software nudges that a user needs to adopt the platform better, to figure his way out in a software. They do it for consumer side, they do it for the business side. And today, Emilia is addressing the bigger problem statement that these guys solve. That is, apart from just guiding the users left and right, these guys help business owners convert their users from free to paid. Emilia, do you want to say hi to the audience and introduce yourself?
Hello everyone. Hello, 𝐬𝐸𝐞𝐫. Thank you for having me. Yeah, so you said it all. Like basically, we are a product growth platform and we help product managers and product marketers essentially get, more value for their users out of their products. We're going to be talking about it all in detail. Excited about this because this is a topic that is really close to my heart.
Emilia, tell me what makes the biggest chunk of your customers? I mean, I can imagine that SaaS platforms are very tricky to navigate. They need a lot of onboarding and training before someone gets their way through it. Do you mostly work with SaaS companies, or do you also work with consumer apps? Because consumer apps is where UX matters more, but SaaS is where you can sort of get away with complexity by just, you know what I mean.
Yes and no. I would say we work mostly with SaaS apps, but these days, we're kind of in the product-led era. So especially with more like SMB SaaS products or product-led SaaS products, these products, the UX matters a lot. It matters most because it's their end users that are making the decision, and it literally takes seconds before they decide that, well, they are feeling overwhelmed. Well, let's leave this app and check out the competitors. So the landscape is super competitive these days. And yeah, it's not like it used to be that you could get away.
Product-led growth has been, all the hype over the last couple of years or more than that. What exactly is PLG? Is PLG the name given to freemium self-serve software? Is that it to PLG? Like just adding a freemium layer that you can access without a credit card or without a human onboarding you. Does that qualify for product-led growth?
Like product-led growth is basically growth that comes from your product, and it doesn't even need to mean that you have a free trial at all. So, you can have a purely sales-led motion and still have product-led growth at later stages of your user's journey, because, growth is not only the initial purchase, but it's also the upgrades, it's also the cross sells. So everything that happens after the initial purchase, that constitutes actually the majority of the revenue SaaS companies make, right? All of this can be driven by the product, and mostly is driven by the product. So you should see product growth kind of in a broader spectrum, right? Than just a free trial. Free trial or a freemium account is just one avenue of driving product-led growth.
No, I can think of Calendly and Zoom for that matter. When you're on Calendly and I'm booking a slot on your Calendly, I'm going to get an email from Calendly. And in that process, you've sort of endorsed Calendly to me without even knowing it. Is that also product-led growth?
Yeah, well, it's a viral loop. I wouldn't say, okay, it is kind of, you can say that to some extent, but the person hasn't actually used your product yet. They're getting an email, right? And they're saying, oh, this is powered by Calendly. Or like the classic example with, I think it was Hotmail, right? That used this loop first, right?
Okay.
That you were getting an email from someone and it said like powered by Hotmail. Is it product-led growth if the recipient hasn't? Like what drives growth is actually, their experience with the product, and the fact that they clicked on the link from the email. That sort of, I would say, yes, it's a growth play. And yes, then the ultimate conversion is product-led, because then they try Calendly and they're like, oh, wow, I need that too.
So, Emilia, We talk about SaaS, and when we talk about self-serve SaaS, which is sort of the playing field for you, uh, the most common narrative that I've heard from my peers is, "Hey, go self-serve only if you are minimally priced, because anything above probably $200 a month or $500 a month requires a salesperson to sort of step in." What are your thoughts on that? Have you seen self-serve that's able to bypass salespeople, or do you think you can never really bypass salespeople, and PLG and self-serve and salespeople have to go hand in hand?
I think there isn't like a specific limit, and it's definitely not $200, right?
Hmm.
So I went to a talk on SaaStr Europa last year, that was led by one of the directors of product at Meta, and he was giving, a talk specifically on this. And he was
Hmm.
quoting a recent study by, I think, Harvard Business Review, that surveyed like CIOs and CTOs and CPOs of big companies, and apparently like 69% of them were happy, were willing to just swipe their credit card up to like $500,000.
Are you kidding me?
So no, I'm not. And we've seen that too with Userpilot. We had deals of like 20,000, 40,000 that were self-serve. So someone just like went, oh yeah, well, we just got 20 grand. Happy days. So it does happen without the involvement of salespeople, just based off the experience with the product. Of course, the more complex the product is, the more likely it is that someone will not get it and they will need someone else to actually help them understand the value. People are more reluctant to sort of make that decision if they're committing to a 1-year contract, or in some cases, some like very much enterprise like level software even have like 2 or 3-year contracts. So in that case, it's a bit of a different story. But if you have monthly billing, you would be surprised how much people are kind of willing to pay, even without like talking to sales at all.
I mean, I'm just trying to absorb what you just said and accept what you said, and I think it's acceptable if you have a great brand, because I don't think this is acceptable for a new startup. I think when you're a new startup, you can't charge so much on a self-serve model, because I mean, people don't have that trust. Once the trust layer is sorted, I think people are willing to spend, because today I can totally believe someone swiping their card for $20,000 a month on Salesforce without talking to a human, or a HubSpot, or Intercom, because these brands have stood the test of time, even MailChimp for that matter. Back in the days, I think early 2000s, when Microsoft Office was a new thing, and there used to be Microsoft Excel, and it used to have this tiny paper clip, sort of
Clippy.
on
Yeah.
the side. I think that was the first time we saw what tooltip could look like. I mean, that was like a on-screen sort of not a mentor but a guide, that he'd be
Yeah.
like, "Hey, maybe you should do this. Hey, did you know about this shortcut? Hey, if you press Control plus Shift plus something happens." I mean, if you look at Microsoft Excel and even Adobe Photoshop, yeah, just these tools, these tools take a long learning curve, and yet we find a lot of people who are self-educated in these tools. So these tools sort of got something right when it comes to user coaching and user guiding. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Clippy is an interesting example. I never thought of Clippy as the kind of pioneer of PLG. That's funny you mentioned it,
No
but
one talks about it.
these are super complex products, but at the same time, they have been around for ages and they have become
And
sort of
massive adoption, massive crazy adoption.
market standards. But look what's happening. Like Canva has to a large extent replaced Photoshop and like the
Yeah.
Adobe Creative Suite for sort of less technical users. You can achieve pretty much comparable or sometimes even better results kind of on the fly. And then, Figma, and then like recently we started kind of using Canva together, because there were some like features that made it super easy to create like really wow, experience. for certain graphics. So yeah, these products have high adoption because they were the market standards, but it doesn't mean that they will remain the staples forever. And we tend to think of certain products as like, oh, this is the standard. Like we used to think of Skype. 5 years ago, nobody was Zooming. Everyone was
Right.
Skyping each other. And like, what happened to Skype? Right? There came
I
a
still
new
don't know. I still don't know. I think Skype's a better product, but I don't know. I mean, I think Zoom won on a few things, but if you've used Skype to keep in touch with people, I think there's a lot of context in Skype that Zoom can never give you.
Maybe, and maybe it's the convenience of literally joining through
Right.
one link, and
Yes.
Zoom still could be simplified. There are still some things that could be improved, and I think they are improving certain things in Zoom for some reason. And it wasn't marketing led. It definitely wasn't sales led. Nobody has reached out to me, right? Like
Right.
3 years ago at the beginning of the pandemic, saying like, "Hey, would you like to buy Zoom instead of Skype? Would you like to see how Zoom is better?" Nobody did that. It was just like the adoption was massive and it went like wildfire. And I think the users have voted with their feet, like what was more convenient to use at this point. And, Microsoft dropped the ball on that.
So, Emilia, I mean, there are a lot of these product funnels, and they tend to work in different ways, and we're just getting started. Because when you talk about Zoom and how it built its adoption, when you talk about Calendly, all these guys probably never relied on the conventional content marketing. I never read a blog on Zoom.
Yeah, me neither.
No sales rep reached out to me for Zoom. So how does someone get skilled in these aspects? And I think this is there method to what's happening here? Yes, we've found the time to term it as product led growth, but how does someone start to understand this? Because if you ask me, hey, when I've explained content marketing, I have 1 2 3. Hey, you go from awareness, consideration, decision, you create bottom of the funnel blogs first, and then go to middle of the funnel, etc. You create case study pages. How do you go about product led growth? Is Userpilot the step one?
Yeah, but I think like what we're talking about here with Zoom, for instance, or with ChatGPT, another great example that, nobody, have you read a blog on ChatGPT? No, it just like took the world by the storm and spread like wildfire, and everyone, including your grandma, is now using ChatGPT to like, I don't know, figure out what's the recipe for lemon meringue. I think with these kind of products, these are exceptions, right? And these are the like 1% holy grail of products that have such a high value and such high utility that there is this, natural virality to them. Even Sam Altman recently tweeted that he went against his own advice. So there is no viral loop in ChatGPT. Like, look at that. There's no, unlike in Calendly, unlike in Zoom, there's no like link to join. There's no link to share. There's no, written with ChatGPT. No, it's just the pure value, and it's also the timing, right? So, for instance, with Zoom, like obviously they timed the market. I mean, nobody could really time the market, but like coincidentally, there was the pandemic and people needed to move to remote work instantly, and suddenly, companies that haven't even considered that like had to do that instantly. So obviously they provided an easy switch. So we need to distinguish between companies that are like an absolute painkiller, right? Or life-saving. It's not even a painkiller. It's essentially an oxygen mask, right? Versus companies that are painkillers, so people still need it, right? But maybe they need to know that there is something like that, right? And then there are companies that are kind of vitamins, right? So yeah, you can take that, but you're not going to die without it, right?
True.
So we kind of help the companies that are painkillers and vitamins, right? There is a place for all, right? The vitamin and supplement market is $1 billion, industry.
Yeah.
So even though you don't need it, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist and it's not profitable.
And gets sold. Yeah, it's very profitable.
Yeah, exactly. But then you need to educate the market that, you may actually need it. right? Because maybe they are not even problem aware, right? So that's where kind of Userpilot comes in. And that's where content marketing comes in the first place, because if someone is not in your product, like Userpilot can't help you.
So Userpilot, if I understand correctly, works within the product.
Yes.
It's in-app messaging, and
And more.
and more. Okay, cool. So sure, there's in-app messaging. Tell me what's on the exterior. Are there emails that you take care of? Are these triggered emails? What are the? I mean, what happens externally?
Externally, like the nice thing about Userpilot, you can of course integrate with email automation tools. You can integrate, for instance, with Intercom. And the nice thing is that if your user is outside your product with the Userpilot, you can take them to a specific place in your product, right? And then take them by the hand and guide them how to do something, right? So say you want them to get to a certain activation point, but they already left your product. They are in the trial, but for some reason, whatever, they got distracted. They had to go like pick up their kids from school, whatever the reason. They left your product. They haven't accomplished this milestone, right? That would get them to the aha moment that would show them the value, right? You send them an email, hey, like you still need to upload your email list to send that first newsletter, right? But instead of sending them a generic link to, say, a page in your app, you send them a permalink from Userpilot that takes them to the exact place in your product and shows them a walkthrough that shows them how to perform this action, right? So you can trigger walkthroughs inside your product from outside your product with Userpilot's permalinks, for instance. So that's kind of one use case, how you can bring people that have gotten outside of your product back to your product and to directly engage with a specific feature of your product.
Pick up where you left.
Exactly.
So Mailmodo recently entered the landscape of email, and these guys introduced AMP emails. And AMP emails have interactivity within the email. So the last time I was talking to someone who had an e-commerce background, he was like, "Hey, pick up where you left." You know, the thing that you spoke about. He was like, "Hey, if someone leaves some items in their cart and forgets to check out or chooses not to check out, instead of retargeting them, what I can, with interactive email, I can be like, hey, go straight check out without going on my sort of the platform. So I don't know if this functionality exists, but interactivity on emails, how do you think that can help with a free to paid? Is pick up where you left the only sort of scope, or could there be more?
Yeah, I think like in general, we need more interactivity in emails because there's still very little you can do with emails. For instance, even videos inside emails.
Right,
This
continual
is,
walkthrough within email. Yeah, you could
yeah.
continue.
Yeah, I mean, it would be hard to embed the interface of a product inside an email. Like, that's kind of, I'm struggling to imagine how that could be done. They kind of look the same like they did 20 years ago. And there's little innovation, and it's not about fancy, design, because, like, okay, the design of newsletters, I feel like it has very little to do with, engagement rates, with click-through rates. It's more about what the users can actually do. My big pain point is that I can't, for instance, embed a video and play a video inside the newsletter.
So it's sort of like a web app within your email.
Yeah, essentially. If you could have that, that would be super cool. Imagine like you could send a cold email where the user could try
Right.
your product without signing
Yeah.
up, without
Yes.
ever leaving their inbox. That would be amazing. Like
Right.
for salespeople, that would be mind-boggling.
That's a good tip. Okay, cool. Emilia, I want to sort of close the loop and go over a few things that folks who are starting. I mean, we discussed a lot of examples. I'm glad because that's really great content, and plus, more than anything, it helps you imagine when you talk about Calendly, when you talk about Zoom, when you talk about Clippy, when you talk about Excel, Photoshop, when you talk about Clearbit, because we've these are state of the art apps that we've all dabbled into. So beautiful chat that we went over these examples, because every time you said, I was able to, okay, hey, I know this. What my closing question to you is, what are sort of the first principles that someone should keep in mind when they're going about on their journey of optimizing or building their free to paid in-app conversion funnel?
All right. So, well, there's a lot. There's a lot to unpack. I guess first, having the right amount of friction.
Friction is good, you're saying.
It depends. Classic answer. Yeah, some friction in your sign up, as I mentioned, for instance, to qualify people is good, because why, let someone in who's definitely not gonna see any value because they're too small, or they're like in the wrong role or whatever, right? So you need to add some friction to qualify the signups, like for instance, what is your role, like what is the size of your company, etc. So that's one thing. Another thing is what I already mentioned with personalizing the onboarding flow to the user's job to be done. As I mentioned, I know like literally a handful of companies that do that, right? And another thing that we haven't discussed yet, and again, very, very, very few companies do that, is creating reactive experiences for the user.
Reactive.
So reactive. So as the name itself suggests, you react to what the user is doing, because a lot of companies still think, oh, onboarding, let's slap a 20-step product tour, right? And the user is just like clicking next, 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 right? Boring, zero value. They haven't learned anything. You just annoyed them. You wasted your time. What's the point? So the idea is that the user does something, right? This basically passes on an event, right, to your backend, and a tool, an onboarding tool like Userpilot, picks up that backend event, and they trigger something in real time, 20 milliseconds on the front end for the user. So the experience only happens when the user has done something and responds to their actions. Again, few companies do that, but some do that. For example, HubSpot. If you are in HubSpot and you're writing an email and then you're copying and pasting that email, HubSpot will trigger a pop-up for you that says, tired of copying and pasting? Right?
Wow.
Try our email templates. And this is brilliant because it's so timely, it's so contextual that it immediately drives feature adoption.
Right.
And it drives value because the user needs it in this moment. Yeah.
I mean, it's like what you're doing is you're giving a fat on how to operate operating manual to your user. And I mean, you could do better. But okay, cool.
Exactly.
Any more pointers?
Yeah, I mean, that you need to keep doing this throughout the user journey. So even if someone has already converted from trial to paid, as we said at the very, very beginning, the product-led growth doesn't stop at the initial sign-up, right? First, you need to keep selling your existing customers on the value of your product, right? They need to keep learning more advanced features to kind of see the point of using your product. Like they understand your product is valuable beyond just the basic features. They don't for instance, switch away to the competitors, right? Because they haven't discovered some more of the advanced features of your product. And also driving that increase in usage, right? Driving this usage of extra features, obviously that pushes your user closer to upgrade. So you should implement what I call a continuous onboarding strategy, right? Where you're continuously pushing users to unlock more value from your product and to increase product adoption throughout their user journey. So that's, again, something that extremely few companies are doing, and that could exponentially increase their expansion revenue.
That's beautiful. So basically doing an onboarding for every new feature, upgrading the experience. I mean, someone's got to obsess about the product like consumer app product managers do obsess about their apps.
Yeah, but when you mentioned launching new features, for instance, okay, companies launch new features, then send an email, and maybe they launch something in-app for the new feature, like a feature announcement. Hey, we have a new feature, right? But obviously, what happens with this new feature when it's not new anymore, and then you have another new feature, right? And the new users that had signed up to your product after that feature launch has finished, they never get to learn this new, now old feature. So you need to implement these new features into this continuous onboarding workflow. You need to kind of understand, okay, how this new feature fits into my user's journey, which segments are going to use it and when will I contextually introduce it to these users.
Right. So I mean, it's like building a game
Yeah,
and unlocking levels. And
exactly. I
a lot
love
of
your
people,
analogies. They're great metaphors.
no, this is how consumer app founders or consumer app product managers go about building their app, because they don't have the liberty of you know having to educate their users. If they don't quickly onboard the user, it's gone
Fair
forever.
enough. Yeah.
So I mean, I think you got to bring that DNA into uh, B2B software, and I think that's what PLG is doing, and it's working. It's not like it doesn't work. It's working, because at the end of at the other end, you always have a human who's using the software.
Hmm.
Lovely, Amelia. This was fun. Thank you so much for making it. Had a good chat. I mean, I got to learn a lot. Thank you so much.
Likewise. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Lovely.
Cheers.
That's a wrap.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye bye. Bye, folks.